Americans here. Good to see you. It's really great to be here with all of you. And I see my dear friend Supervisor Debbie Arnold over here in the front row. We love you. Thank you for serving our county. And
we support Dan Dill! Yeah, baby!
Thank you. It is really a privilege and an honor to stand here with you tonight and to hear from the speakers that we've already had. There's a theme here, and I think you're going to notice with some of my remarks that even though I promise we didn't collude, we didn't talk together about what we were going to say tonight, but there's a significant common theme. And I hope that it's inspiring to each one of you and us as we leave here tonight, that we have a renewed commitment for standing up for freedom together as Americans who value the sacrifice that it took to give us the freedom that we have. And so today we join here in unity with millions of Americans across this great nation to pause and to remember September 11th, 2001 for what it was, as a dark day when our beloved United States of America was attacked here on American soil by a foreign terrorist adversary. In that vicious and cowardly attack, nearly 3,000 citizens who were just living their lives, doing their normal daily routine, were killed by 19 extremists who hated our American way of life. They hated our system of self-governance that we just heard about, that was built on the principles of individual liberty and justice for all. On September 10th, the night before the attack, every one of these Americans, I would presume, prepared for their next day the way that they normally did, because they expected the next day to be a normal day at work, a normal day of travel for business, a normal day on the beat as a police officer, a normal day responding to emergencies for fire and medical personnel. It was not a normal day. On the morning of September 11th, these Americans who went to the airports, went to fly out of town, the ones that went to work to do their job in New York City, those that went to work in the Pentagon to defend our nation, and those that went to work as a first responder, ultimately led to 3,000 Americans, unsuspecting Americans, who never returned home that day. I want to give you an overview of the timeline of that tragic morning. I'm afraid that 19 years later, we've forgotten some of the important details of what happened. But the attacks began, and I'm sure you all remember where you were at that time, that you first heard about what was going on, because we were 3 hours earlier, some were still asleep here and woke up to that tragedy. But the attacks began in New York City when the North Tower of the World Trade Center was first hit by that very first plane, American Airlines Flight 11. It was at 8:46 a.m. in the morning. 17 minutes later, during that chaos, at 9:03, United Airlines Flight 175 was flown into the South Tower of the World Trade Center. That was the moment when America knew this was not an accident, but we were under attack. 9 minutes later than that, at 9:12 a.m., a flight attendant, Renee May, she called her mother from American Airlines Flight 77 and told her mom that hijackers had just taken control of her flight using knives and box cutters. It took about 25 minutes later, at 9:37 a.m., that Flight 77 was used as a bomb to crash into the Pentagon, killing 125 military and civilian personnel, along with 53 passengers and 6 crew members of that flight that was headed from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles. 21 minutes after that, at 9:58, United Airlines Flight 93 was discovered to have been hijacked. Some 37 passengers made telephone calls from that flight, passengers and crew. A group of passengers ultimately decided they needed to do something to stop the terrorists from using the plane to kill more innocent lives, because they were hearing on their phone conversations that we were under attack. So they put together a plan to take control back from the hijackers. A moment later, after it was discovered that that plane was hijacked, just 1 minute later at 9:59, while that chaos was happening on that plane, the South Tower collapsed, the very first of the 2 towers. It had been burning for about 55 minutes, and more than 800 civilians and emergency personnel were killed by the attack on the South Tower alone. Now back on Flight 93, while that was happening at the South Tower, passenger Todd Beamer tried to place a credit card call through a phone located on the back of a plane seat. You might remember Todd. He was a 32-year-old man, a businessman with 3 beautiful children. His call was eventually routed to a customer service representative who passed him on to a GTE airphone supervisor named Lisa Jefferson. Mr. Beamer told Ms. Jefferson that hijackers had just taken over his flight United 93 and that 1 passenger had already been killed. He also stated that 2 of the hijackers had knives and 1 appeared to have a bomb that was strapped around his waist. When the hijackers veered the plane sharply south and Beamer was still on the phone, he exclaimed, "We're going down. We're going down." According to accounts of the cell phone conversations, Beamer, along with his fellow passengers, Mark Bingham, Tom Burnett, Jeremy Glick, formed a plan to take the plane back from the hijackers. They were joined by the other passengers, including Lou Knackel, Rich Guadagno, Alan Bevan, Honor Elizabeth Wyneo, Linda Gronland and William Cashman, along with flight attendants Sandra Bradshaw and Cece Lyles, and they discussed their plans and they voted on the best course of action. That group of brave Americans, not Republicans, Democrats, white or black, but that group of brave Americans in that plane decided to storm that cockpit and attempt to take over the plane. Todd Beamer told Ms. Johnson on the phone that they were planning to take control from the hijackers and fly the plane into the ground before the terrorists could do whatever they planned to do next. Mr. Beamer recited the Lord's Prayer in the 23rd Psalm with Jefferson, and it was believed from listening to other recordings of the conversations that others around them joined in. Beamer then asked Ms. Jefferson, "If I don't make it, please call my family and let them know how much I love them." After this, Jefferson heard muffled voices and Beamer clearly answering, "Are you ready? Okay. Let's roll. Let's roll." These were Todd Beamer's last words to Miss Jefferson. At 10:03, just 1 hour and 17 minutes after the first plane hit the Twin Towers, Flight 93 came crashing down in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Todd Beamer and his fellow passengers died as selfless heroes, doing whatever they could do to prevent their flight from being used as a missile to be flown into the Capitol or the White House or the Supreme Court or some other unknown target. In total, 33 passengers and 7 crew members died while heroically fighting against these hijackers. And we will never know exactly how many lives they saved by giving up their own. At 10:28, a short time later, the North Tower collapsed. And more than 1,600, twice the number in the South Tower, were killed as a result of the attack on that North Tower. All total, as we know, on September 11th, 2001, Americans of every race, every religion, every stripe were suddenly and unexpectedly taken from us by a foreign terrorist adversary. Let's just pause for a moment of silence. On that day, the people of our nation, if you remember, came together. As never before, perhaps, instantly united. You heard Republicans and Democrats on the Capitol steps singing, "God Bless America." There was no Republican or Democrat after September 11th for a time. And for the many months that followed, we were proud Americans and we were committed to finding out who was responsible and getting justice for what had happened here on our land. We saw handmade signs all over the country. It was here in California, it was in New York, it was everywhere in between. Signs like "United We Stand." You remember that? All the patriotism and the flags that were flown and the handmade signs everywhere. A lot of recognition for the fire department in New York with FDNY signs everywhere, NYPD. I saw some signs today as I was kind of researching some of these events, and I saw a sign that stuck with me that says, "We still have hope." And why is that? It's because we Americans are resilient. We believe in freedom, we believe in defending ourselves, and we believe in defending our free way of life. Americans came to New York and Washington, D.C. from all over the country in order to help in searching for remains, searching for bodies, helping to get those that were wounded and do the recovery mission, as well as the cleanup that happened after that. You realize that the gravity of that fire contained in those two buildings was so significant that it burned for 100 days. 100 days with gallons and gallons of water being poured on it all the time, and it being dug up. Every time that they would move a steel beam and it would expose oxygen to what was underneath, it would flare up again and burn. Many of those that came from around the country to serve at that time, and those that were first responders and the people that were cleaning up, have already died from cancer that they've received because of the toxins in the fumes and in the particles that they were inhaling, because of their willingness to sacrifice to help our country recover. And many are still dealing with those significant health issues today. But here we are in 2020, the year that will not end. And we are in a very different place. Are we not? I mean, we remember that united time, but today we are in a very different place. And I'm afraid that as a country and as a society, we have focused so much on the differences that we have, we've lost sight of how much we have in common and how much we believe in the same. We now have forgotten that we are privileged. And here's where I'll have a little different take than my friend Andy. We're privileged because we were born in this free country that was purchased with the sacrifice that Andy talked about. Every American, no matter what your stripe, no matter where you live, whether you're poor or you're wealthy, if you're an American, you're born into a country that has the ideals of liberty where everyone can succeed. Everyone's given opportunity to succeed. And that is what makes us uniquely American. And it seems we've forgotten that. So you and I, we're all privileged to live in the land of the free. But remember that we're only the land of the free because we are also, first and foremost, the home of the brave. The brave who sacrificed more than 244 years this year for our freedom. From the revolution forward to today. Those who've sacrificed are not just those in the military that we honor here at Faces of Freedom, but they're the allies that came along to support and to help us. The allies that began in the Revolutionary War forward. Every one of our military servicemen and women that have served. Our law enforcement, our police officers, our fire and emergency personnel, and ordinary citizens like Todd Beamer and the rest of his fellow passengers who answered the call that was thrust on them with only a moment's notice. We have today a number of law enforcement officers. I know we have first responders, we have fire, we have medical personnel, emergency workers, health workers that work in the emergency rooms. I want each and every one of you to please stand up, and if you're already standing, raise your hand so that we can acknowledge and thank you for your service. I am proud of our law enforcement community in San Luis Obispo County. I am proud of our sheriff's office and the professionalism. I'm proud of the professionalism of every one of the law enforcement agencies that we have in our county, including the District Attorney Investigative Bureau. These individuals that we have in our community, and heroes like Nick Dreyfus and the others that were involved in the big shooting up there, what is unique about them and what they're doing is they are willing, not only willing, but they want to run into the face of danger to protect us from those that want to harm us or kill us. So that's why we thank you for the sacrifice that you do every single day to put your life on the line to protect us. I want to close with a request. The request is kind of along the theme of what Andy and Vicki talked about. But will each of you, whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, a Libertarian, a declined estate, whether you're rich or whether you're poor, whether you have faith, whether you don't, no matter what you look like, if you're an American and you enjoy the liberty and freedom that we all have here, would you commit to never, ever, ever again taking it for granted? I love this country, and it was not given to us freely. It was given to us at great cost, as has already been talked about. And because of that, it's our responsibility to cherish it, protect it, nourish it, and then hand it over to our children and our grandchildren so that they can hand it to theirs. The only way that this is going to happen, though, is for each of us in our families and in our communities and in our organizations and our businesses to promote the values of liberty that our country was founded on. We can't let it be lost in our schools and in our universities and in our civic organizations. There may need to be rigorous debate on how best we can preserve our liberty. We've got different ideas, but we need to do it in a manner that never compromises on the idea that it can be lost as quickly as it was secured for us. And that liberty we have is worth standing up for. It is worth fighting for. And if necessary, like Todd Beamer and those in that plane, it is worth dying for. So today, while we're sadly divided on so many issues around the country, we're hearing a lot of different messages that are designed to divide us from within. And sadly, many of us are taking the bait. I believe that we must quickly and loudly reject the ideas that are being promoted by the very few in our country that would happily take our liberty away. The ideas of Marxism and anarchy that I see being promoted lead to chaos and destruction. We must stand up proudly, we must stand up firmly to preserve our individual liberties that the American patriots of every prior generation have stood up for. So let us commit today, each one of us, to stand up together the same way that the signers of the Declaration of Independence did when they said, and I'm going to repeat the quote, "and for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence, we mutually pledge to each other, to one another, we pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. If we stand as a nation united on the principles of liberty, we will survive, and we will survive whatever gets thrown our way." And if you agree with that, then in the words of Todd Beamer, let's roll.
I would like to thank our speakers for their wonderful messages this evening. For those of you that don't know me, I am Luther Johnson. I am one of those struggling hairstylists that Vicki was talking about earlier this evening. I've been going through this craziness. I would also like to thank all the people that helped me in organizing this event. Jennifer Greninger, raise your hand, please. Bishop Gabriel Abdelaziz, Jason Anderson, Dan Hathaway, Cindy Muir, John Whitworth, and those that helped with financial support through our GoFundMe, Unify America. So if you would like to see us continue with this message about unifying America, feel free to donate to the GoFundMe page. But before we play taps, I would like to leave you with a few final thoughts. Like on 2001,